Welcome to Power Lunch Live. I'm Rhett Power, your host. It's good to be with you here today. I'm on the road, so this is the first couple shows while I'm traveling, and the first time in 8 months. I've been in the studio for a long, long time. It's nice to be back out on the road doing the show from a different location. So anyway, it's good to be with you. Now, today I've got Brendan Kane. We're going to talk about social media. We're going to talk about influence. We're going to talk about growth hacking today on Power Lunch Live. The whole point of the show is to bring you today's thought leaders, best-selling authors, people who are doing amazing work in the world that we can learn from so we can get better at what we do. And Brendan has got a best-selling book, and it's called 1 Million Followers. And I think this is going to be a fascinating conversation about how to grow your following, how to grow your influence. Brendan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's great to connect with you and all the people watching.
Well, we are on LinkedIn Live. We're on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, I think Twitch, and probably some others. Now, we do monitor the feed during the show. So if you have questions for Brendan, please do ask. Put your message in the chat so that we can get to it. Brendan, how's your business doing during COVID? I know you're on the road a lot typically. So I know this has been quite a big change.
Yeah, the business side has been really interesting, specifically, I would say, for a lot of my clients, because, as you know, consumer behavior has shifted dramatically. So we have a lot of clients that rely on retail and, in-person transactions, and we've quickly, shifted and pivoted to more online e-commerce, and that growth has been pretty remarkable. So I would say from a consumer behavior standpoint, it's been interesting to see that quick transition into new formats and new ways that consumers are purchasing, engaging. And when it comes to social media, I mean, as soon as COVID hit and people were really forced to stay home, the social media usage also went through the roof. So from a business perspective, it's been an interesting past 6 or 7 months, to say the least. But we've adapted very quickly and have seen success in our business and in the clients that we work with based upon the way that we approach things.
Is it? And I'm probably going to jump around a little bit, but excuse me if I do. But so with that explosion of social media, is paid and focused advertising or paid ads, is that taken off, or has that changed, or sort of the strategy around how to put your product or service out there? Is that changed with COVID? Is that really kind of shaken up how you focus your product and your social strategy?
I would say it really changes from the standpoint of understanding how you want the consumer to engage with your brand. Mm-hmm. So for certain companies that are like direct to e-commerce or all online, it doesn't change that much other than potential language and structures of your messages to understand the psychological needs and the psychological mindset the consumers are in. Mm-hmm. The biggest shift has been for companies that have focused in store, or focused on that retail, or focused going into a physical location. Obviously, that's been a huge shift of budgets and philosophy and strategy of meeting the consumer to where they're actually going to engage, rather than what it's been done historically over the past 5 or 10 years.
Have you seen an instance during COVID where a smaller business has been able to take their business more globally or more broadly? I mean, because everybody's had to sort of change their delivery strategy, right? Whether you're a bakery on the corner or whether you're a big global business, how you get that customer that product to the customers changed. Have you seen some instances where social has really helped, like a smaller or medium-sized company, kind of blow up and do more globally?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. Is to give you an example, we have a yoga instructor who's one of the top yoga instructors in the world as a client now. And really the big push has been where a lot of it was in-person training, retreats, yoga classes, things of that nature. It had to go to more online teaching, subscription-based, and other business models that then removes that restriction on geolocation and opens up to a completely new customer base around the world, and presents a tremendous opportunity. And at the same time, there's challenges when you make that shift doing it. But I love the fact that you brought up that question, because as difficult as today is, and I'm not diluting it, it is difficult for a lot of businesses and a lot of people around the world. It presents great opportunity. And the companies that realize that the shift is here and it's there to stay, that go into solution mode and be like, okay, how do we look at the larger picture of how our business is operated and where it needs to go in the future? Those companies are not only going to thrive, they're going to dominate their markets. They're going to dominate their industries for years to come.
So, I mean, so that gets down into the granular kind of what place I wanted to go with our conversation. I'm glad you went there, because as a consultant and somebody that focuses a lot on social and content development, one of the challenges I see with most businesses is it's putting all that together into a strategy, right? I mean, you may have decent content, but the how you're putting it out there and where you're putting it is really a challenge. I mean, and then how do you develop that talent internally? Do you seek that out externally? I mean, there's so many challenges around how to really do a social strategy well, and how to put content out there really well so that it's well received and you get the impact that you want. Talk about that a little bit, and how you do it, and how you see how companies should structure and think about their social strategy and how to get their message out there, because I think that's a real challenge for most businesses.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge, and one of the reasons that it's such a big challenge is the amount of content that is published. Like, there's 60 billion messages sent on digital platforms each day, between like emails, text notifications, social media, push notifications. It's just insane. There was another statistic that was mind-blowing too, is Forbes had released an article saying that the average person's exposed to between 4,000 and 10,000 ads a day. So when you look at that landscape of all of that noise, the competition has shifted. Most people still view competition as people in their industry selling the same product or service as them. But today, with all of that content being published, with all of this noise that's happening, you're now fighting it against attention of everybody. You're fighting against LeBron James, The Rock, Netflix, the NBA, like it or not. So the first place I'd like to start from a strategic landscape is, how can we first win attention? Like, that is the biggest asset a business needs to have, is how can I win that first 3 to 5 seconds so that I can get somebody to pay attention to what I have to say, get somebody to pay attention to my brand, to my message, to my story. So like the second book that I just released, Hook Point, How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World, it's all about that, because we've just seen it in all the work that we've done for our brands and our clients. amassing tens of millions of followers across social platforms, 40 billion plus views, hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue generated. Everything starts with, how are we going to win the conversation? How are we going to create this pattern interrupt as I keep swiping, as the consumer keeps swiping and swiping and swiping? How am I going to get them to stop and pay attention, whether it's organic or paid? Same principles. Like, you have to be a master at winning the first part of the conversation so that you can get the next part. So we often say is, win the first 3 seconds so that you can get to the next 5 to 10 and the next 30 and the next 60 and so forth.
Does it come down to, and I'm glad you brought the hook point in, is this about getting the 1 million followers, or is it getting the 5,000 that are key to your business? Right. I mean, is it about broad social sort of, influence, or is it really about narrowing in on who's going to make a difference to you as a customer?
Yeah, it's a great question. It depends on the client. Okay. Some clients that I work with, they're in the boat of, hey, I need to generate revenue right now, like starting today. That's my goal. Is I need to increase my revenue by 2 or 3x. I need to bring in X number of customers. In that instance, it's getting very granular. It's going after those 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 targeted customers.
Which you can find, right? You can identify.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty of the platforms that have been built off these off social media, as you know, is the granular targeting that you can get to is pretty remarkable, and that wasn't really around 5 or 10 years ago. But there's other clients that they're looking at a larger picture of, hey, I need validation. I need social credibility to get a record deal, to get a book deal, to get bigger speaking opportunities, to get on bigger podcasts or press. Or I'm looking at the longer term play. It's like, hey, I want to go wide and large, build a following, and then cultivate that following over the next few months or few years, and then turn them into consumers. So we work in both capacities, and both strategies work. It's just a matter of, where is a business at today? What do they really need? And then we'll choose what is the best strategy for them. And that's how I constructed both of my books. And one of the frustrations I have around social media is that most experts will say, this is exactly what you have to do. This is the one strategy that you have to do in order to be successful. And it's just not the case. And it's not the case with anything. There's multiple ways to be successful. That's why when I work with a client, or even when I write a book or a blog post or something like that, I want to provide different perspectives, different paths, different strategies, so they can choose the right one that is best for the goals and KPIs they have for their business and growth.
How do you know? I remember hiring and this is probably 10 or 15 years ago, but how do you hire somebody to help you with your social strategy? Because most of us, most business owners or most entrepreneurs, they know enough to be dangerous. They know how to get on Facebook, they know how to get on Twitter or LinkedIn, but that's about as far as it goes, right? Maybe they can even do a great video, a short video, or maybe they can even write it. I mean, I write a lot of content myself. Maybe they do that well, but how do you figure out the strategy? And talk about that hook point, and talk about growing that following, because that's the challenge to me, is like, how do you get those? How do you win those first 3 seconds? How do you, and where do you put all this content, and how, and in what format? So like what's working right now in your view?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. I'll start with, first off, how do you know the right strategy is first starting with the questions that I started out with. Is like, what does your business need today? And what does your business need a year from now and 5 years from now, and working your way back that way. And I think that you brilliantly put it, is the first place to start is know enough to know when you're hiring the right person or the wrong person, or at least the right questions to ask. Is oftentimes, I recommend, before hiring a social media expert or agency, do as much research on your own as possible. Not to say that you need to do it, but at least understand the fundamentals of how things work. Now, going to the other part of your question is with the hook point, like what's working, what's not working, how to approach it. Well, one of the the biggest things we see across the board on social channels is they're weighting video heavier than image. Now, that's not to say that you cannot be successful with images, because there's channels that are very successful with it. But when we talk about video, really that first 3 seconds is critically important, because what all of the algorithms do on all these social platforms is one of the key metrics that we pay attention to is the amount of reach they give you for that piece of content and the number of views. Now, on almost all social platforms, they're now not counting a view at the 1 second mark. They're counting it at the 3 second mark, because years back, if you remember, the advertisers were up in arms that they were getting charged on a 1 second view. So the brand advertisers pushed back and they changed it to a 3 second view. So one of the most important metrics, either paid or organic, is that view to reach ratio, which means the algorithms will push it out to a certain number of people, and then they're going to measure the ratio of the number of people that stop and at least click that or get to that 3 second mark. And what we have found in our data and our testing, that a minimum, it's got to be 30%. If you're over 40 or 50%, that's when you have the opportunity to not just reach all of your followers, but also to extend beyond that. Because and there's a lot of misconception about the algorithms. Most people think the algorithms are out to get them. The algorithms are only there to get you to pay for reach. It's not the case. The algorithms are there to do one thing and one thing only. That's to keep people on the platform longer. Because the longer people spend on those platforms, the more they can monetize those users. So the algorithms have a very difficult job. If we opened up LinkedIn right now, or Instagram, or Facebook, or YouTube, there's probably 1,000 pieces of content it can seed to you based upon all of the people you follow and all of the content that you've engaged with. So the algorithms have a tough job. They've got to prioritize what are the first 10 to 15 posts that I'm going to send to this specific person that I think is going to keep them on the platform longer. And that cuts out a lot of other content. So when you see an account with low reach or low engagement, it's typically not that they have fake followers or the audience is unengaged. It's just not playing to what the algorithms are looking for to give you that reach. So that's the first step when we talk about hooks, is you've got to get them to stop and at least hit that 3 second mark. Because if you don't do that, the algorithms are just going to suppress your reach right off the bat organically. And if it's paid, your cost in the auction is going to go way up. So that's where we talk about hook points, is how we can get people to stop and pay attention to at least hit that 3 second mark. Now, right, to hit the 3 second mark, that's not the whole job. You've got to retain them after that. But your first part is winning that attention in those first 3 seconds. And we use a tool called a hook point. And a hook point is designed specifically to grab attention. Now, there's different ways and different formats that you can use to establish them. At a very high level, what we're aiming to achieve is pattern interruption. And I'm sure you've heard that term a lot in marketing and psychology, is right, because people are swiping and they've just seen LeBron James, Kim Kardashian, the NBA, Netflix. What is that pattern interrupt? That as they're scrolling endlessly and in some cases mindlessly, to get them to stop and pay attention. So at a high level, it's pattern interruption. Now, there's different ways to achieve pattern interruption. You can do that specifically with the text on a meme card or the text in a headline. So to give you an example, one of the aspects that we use sometimes is called subverting expectations. We don't use it all the time, but it is a very effective tool. So if I am going to be selling a meditation app or a meditation retreat, what I need to do is subvert expectations against what everybody else has said. Because if I type in meditation right now into Google, there's probably 3 billion results, because it's been around for thousands of years. And most people will go the route of saying, well, meditation is the key to success, or meditation is the key to happiness or contentment. And if I see that, I already know what the video is going to be about, because I've heard it thousands of times.
Right.
So it's like, why do I need to watch this video, whether it's an ad or organic?
Right.
So if I were to look at that from a pattern interruption and subverting expectations, I would flip it on its head and say, have the headline is meditation is a scam. And then what I would do is I would start off the video saying, hey, listen, have you ever been in this boat where you just felt meditation is never going to work for you, that it's just a complete scam because of all the misinformation or guidance you've been given? Well, I've been there myself. I wanted to meditate for years and I experienced all this misinformation. Like, have you ever been told that you need to clear your head to meditate, and you sit down and you have all these racing thoughts and you can't get rid of them? Well, today I want to share you a few tips as a non-meditator, how I got into meditation and allowed me to build a practice over the past 12 years.
That's brilliant.
So what I'm doing is doing the pattern interruption by subverting expectations. Now, I'm not doing clickbait because there's three key pillars to making a hook point work. First is grabbing that attention. Second is, what is the story you're telling? So I told the story is like, I feel your pain. I've been there. I was in your shoes. And then the third part is, are you doing it believably? Do people trust what you're saying? And all three have to come into play, because if you don't grab attention, you'll never get to the story. If you grab attention and your story sucks, you've lost that attention. And
Right.
if you grab attention, tell a story, but people don't believe it, then it falls flat. So that's one tool that we use in that process. Other tools that you can use is performance. So for example, Prince EA, who wrote the forward for my book, is one of the best motivational and inspirational content creators on the planet. And it's because he has the cadence, he has the performance, he has the delivery, where he'll take a subject matter like environmentalism, which again has been talked about endlessly. There's billions of results. And typically it's a dry subject. Most videos will get like 1,000 or 10,000 views. He did a beautiful performance of a video talking about the environment that got 121 million views, saying the same thing as other people, but just saying it in a specific way. You can also do it with like your insight and combining your insight with things. So there's a doctor that's quickly become one of the most popular doctors in the world called Dr. Mike. And he has a YouTube channel that has generated hundreds of millions of views. And what he did so brilliantly is he took his insight as a real doctor and then commented on pop culture references. So he said, like, his two most viewed videos that have 20 million views each is real doctor reacts to Grey's Anatomy. Real doctor reacts to The Good Doctor.
Right.
Which, like, even if you don't know who he is, and most people don't, because I think he has like 4 million subscribers and he got 20 million views. So most people don't know who that is, but he's taking his insight and matching it with a pop culture reference to bring people in. He didn't say, hi, I'm Dr. Mike, and I'm going to break down the different elements of protecting your immune system. He said, real doctor, he doesn't even name his name, real doctor reacts to Grey's Anatomy. So that's another tool. Sometimes a hook point can be a service in and of itself. So one of the services that has dramatically grown since COVID and even before is Instacart. It's groceries delivered in less than an hour. That's a hook. I get it. It's saving me time and doing all these things. And in some instances, it can be a product. So for the perfect example, no matter what you think about the design of it, is the Cybertruck. And some people will say it is the ugliest looking truck. Some people will say it's the coolest looking truck. And a lot of people think that Elon Musk did it on purpose, almost designed it to be ugly to stand out. Now, if he designed it and it looked like the next Ford F-150, it wouldn't stand out. But because he has the guts to actually put a concept car out in the world that's actually for sale and design it in this crazy, unique way, whether you think it's awesome or ugly, that serves as a hook point to get people to pay attention to Elon. It gets people to pay attention to Tesla. And that's where, I don't remember the time period, but it was like 250,000 pre-orders on the Cybertruck. Yep. I mean, that's like insane. The thing isn't even produced yet, and people are ordering it at that scale. So
I almost fell for it. I almost fell for it. Almost.
So those are just some examples of hook points in how it works.
What is I mean, you're a master at helping companies sort of just explode their social. What's this process like? How do you go in and help evaluate that company or that product? And I mean, what does a strategy coming together look like? What's your process for coming in and helping somebody figure this thing out?
It's a great question. And every place that I always start is what makes them unique? What makes them different? What is their hook point? Because I know that if I have a hook, if I have a way to grab attention, I can reverse engineer the rest of it behind it. But like we can focus heavily on the product or optimizing like conversion rates and things like that nature. And it helps, don't get me wrong. But the biggest impact is, okay, what do we really see as different about this company that is unique, that we can grab attention? And then from there, we can develop the entire strategy around it.
What's the balance between paid and regular content that you put out? Is there a balance?
It depends on the client, depends on the goals.
Okay.
And one of the key things that we're really focused on is, like with my team, I have some of the best organic social minds in the planet that have generated 40 billion plus views. And then my background and other people on the team have tremendous experience with paid and generating hundreds of millions of dollars through paid performance. So what we're doing is marrying the two of them together. Is how can paid strategies work off organic, and how can organic strategies work off of paid, so they play together and mesh together well, so that you can really amplify a brand, you can really amplify the performance of the goals. But each client is a little bit different. Some clients, especially when we talk about like a smaller local business, is like organic is going to be a tough road because of the algorithms and the way they're going. So I'm just like, let's define what our business KPIs are. How much can you acquire a client for? What is the projected lifetime value, or what are the actual lifetime value metrics of that client? And let's just focus on maximizing Yelp, Google search, and YouTube ads and those things to really get attribution-based marketing going. Because that's the beauty of the world that we live in today is most advertising out there is attribution-based, meaning we can see for every dollar we spend, how many dollars we get into return. So for those companies that are looking for just revenue growth as quick as possible, that's where we start, and we max out all those channels. We figure out where the ceiling is on Facebook and Instagram ads, where the ceiling is on YouTube ads, where the ceiling is on Google ads. And then once we've maximized that, we have the revenue flowing and the company is profitable, then we can go back and reinvest in organic and go that way, because organic is more of a longer term play that you have to build out. Now, some clients already have the profit, they have the revenue, have the attribution channels working for them. So we'll go directly into organic and build that strategy out for them.
To be successful, if I'm a CEO and I'm thinking, well, I know I need to put money in this now, what kind of budget, and I'm not going to ask you a dollar amount, but what kind of percentage of budget should you look at putting towards this kind of growth? And I think this is clearly the way the future, if you're spending money in advertising, this is where you're going to spend it the most effectively. But what kind of percentage of budget should people be thinking about? I mean, what does that make sense as a question?
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. And it's one of the conversations I have with clients, especially corporate clients, when I first start working with them, is I want to break the mindset of a budget. Is like, yes, give me a test budget, or we can define what a test budget is. But the whole idea of these attribution-based platforms is the mindset should be, how much money can I spend into it? Okay. Not, hey, my budget is $5,000 a month. It's like, okay, give me $5,000 a month to test, or it doesn't even have to be that much. It could be $500. Let's run a $500 test or a $1,000 test. And if it works, if it hits our KPIs or our return on ad spend is solid, then let's keep spending against it until it breaks. Because like the old mindset of, here's your budget for the year, here's your budget for the quarter, here's your budget for the month, I think is very antiquated. And you look at the companies, and I know 5 people that have created billion-dollar companies in the past 5 years, is they have that mindset of, if we have something that's working, it's hitting our KPIs, let's pump as much money. Why stop?
Yeah, why cut it off? Right.
Yeah.
Is there an associated sort of production budget? I mean, producing video is not cheap. I mean, so you really have to think of it in that side too, right? You have to put money towards all of that.
Yes. However, like in my process, I always recommend spending the least amount of money producing content in the beginning until you have proven like what hypothesis works, like what storyline works, what headline works, what format works, and just do it as cheaply and as cost efficiently as possible in the beginning before you invest too much in content, because people can get carried away. And I've seen this working with some of the biggest brands in the world, is they'll spend hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars on a piece of content that hasn't even been validated, it hasn't been tested. And you don't need to do that. Like, we literally just launched campaigns for my new book with just like basic images of the book and basic text, and we're already getting like a 3 or 4 ROAS on it, a return on ad spend. And I have to put myself in check, because my creative mind goes and I want to create all these crazy things and ideas and things of that nature. And I have to ground myself to be like, okay, take a deep breath and slow down, and let's see what's working. And then once we know what's working, then we can build and build and build. But I don't want people to feel like I need to spend a ton of money creating content or ads and things of that nature in the beginning. As you build and you gain success, then reinvest those profits into bigger and bigger content. But you, as a social media expert, have seen, like, why do some videos shot on an iPhone get 100 million views? It's not because people care about production value.
That's what I was going to ask you. I mean, do you even really need to do that today, when you can put it right in front of your face, the camera right in front of your face, and speak for 2 minutes, right? And I'm sure you could do that about your book, and it may be even more effective.
Yeah, and we often, like, my creative director will often just be like, hey, I want you to just shoot it on your phone. And we advise clients to do that as well. Is oftentimes we've seen, and it's almost counterintuitive, but the more production value something has, the less it performs. Because people can smell it. People can smell it feels like an ad, or it smells like you trying to sell them something. Now, I'm not going to say that it doesn't. Like, you look at some of Princier's videos and it's like beautiful production value, but it's not the production value that is making it perform. So we have to work with clients a lot on this from a mindset perspective. Is it doesn't have to look perfect. It doesn't have to look pretty. It just needs to touch people. It needs to communicate with them and connect with them. That's what people are looking for.
Yeah, I think it's a really valuable point. Because I think sometimes, like you said, we feel like we've got to do this, right? We've got to cut that commercial like we did in the old days. I remember the old days of being in the agency, and you had to get the crew out there. It was a production, right? And I think today we've just got the ability to do it in a much more real and touching way, a more genuine way. But no, that's just me. But so how? So you talked about video. Do you think of content where, I mean, do you look at written, and I mean, how do you strategize between like written content and video content and even photographic content? Do you play off of one another with all that content? And is there still value in, sort of a longer post on something like a LinkedIn or?
Yeah, all great questions. First off, the last question, is there value in longer posts? I would say there's tremendous value if the longer post warrants it. It's like, it comes down to content. And there's this misconception, and even when I talk about hook points and capturing attention in 3 seconds, or we live in a micro attention world, that doesn't mean you can't get people to engage with longer form content. All I'm saying is that you have to win the attention first to then get them to the longer form content. So a longer form post, whether it's text, video, or text wrap around an image, or a blog post, or even a book, like, people will engage with long form content. Now, each platform is a little bit different in terms of the consumption behavior. When you look at LinkedIn or you look at Facebook or Instagram, typically the consumption behavior is more short form versus YouTube, which is long form. And that's really because the consumer behavior has been trained in that way.
Yeah.
It's less about the content, but really is starting with, when developing any type of content, is why do I want to express it in this format? And what is the value I'm driving through this format? How am I capturing attention, and how am I going to retain that attention? And then if it warrants long form, then you can do it in long form. So, like, an example is, look at Joe Rogan. Like, on YouTube, he'll launch a 2.5 to 3.5 hour podcast. and people will watch the whole thing because he hooks them in and engages them. Now, there's other people that will post a 2.5 hour podcast on YouTube and 0 people will watch it.
Yeah, 0,
So
right?
it really plays to your strengths as well. But I think every format has a role in today's world. It's just, how do you express it? How do you maximize it? How do you connect with your audience? There's certain people, like if you look at Humans of New York and Brandon Stanton and what he did of taking portraits and then telling beautiful stories in the text about them. Yeah. Works amazing because the content is meaningful. Is his photography the best in the world? No. But the way that he expresses it through the captions is really compelling and really brings you in. There's another Instagram account that I absolutely love called Kirby Jenner. And all he does is he photoshops himself into Kendall Jenner photos. And it's entertaining, it's engaging. And then you have other people like a Joe Rogan that does a podcast and get people to tune in for 2.5 hours. So I really focus on what is it that we want to express? How are we going to connect with people? How are we going to entertain them or provide value with them? And then also, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? And then we can determine how to best use each of those formats to reach our goals.
Do we, when you get this engagement, how do you keep it? Is it responding to the person the first time that they maybe respond to a message, they share or like it? Is it coming back to them and saying thank you for that, love? I mean, is it keeping those people? Is it a matter of engaging with them once they've engaged with you the first time?
Engagement is a big part of it. Is you want to try and engage with the people that have appreciated or engaged with your content, or some people that may have a critical response to it as well. I'm not saying like the crazy critical responses, but if somebody has constructive criticism, I think it's just as important to engage with them as well. But to me, can engagement help and engagement important? Yes. But to me, the biggest focus is how do we keep producing content at that level? Because content at the end of the day is what's going to keep people engaged. It's okay. Yes, responding to a comment or thanking people, that helps, but it doesn't mean that they're going to pay attention to the next piece of content just because you've done that.
Okay. Yeah, that's always a question you get. How much do I miss an opportunity if I don't thank somebody or respond to their comment, or and that's incredibly hard to do all the time.
It is. I'll just give you an example, though. I worked with Taylor Swift and her team for like 2 years, and she was a master at this. She was a master at, in the beginning, fostering one-to-one communication with as many fans as possible, of responding to comments, signing autographs, taking photos with fans, and she did it by design. She's brilliant because she understood that turned into brand advocates. Now, eventually, it got to a place where it couldn't scale, and she couldn't do it all the time. So she transitioned to showing up at a bridal shower of a fan or a birthday party, or having fans come to her house and listen to her new album. That's her way of expressing to all of her fans, hey, I hear you. I appreciate you.
Right.
And thus, the fans feel like they're connected to her. Now, at the same token, even after doing that, if her albums were horrible and her music were horrible,
right,
people aren't going to keep listening. It's like, there's a certain subset of diehard fans that would love anything she does, no matter what. But it's still like she understands the importance of creating great music and great performances
consistently.
That really drives her brand.
It's that consistency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about the book a little bit. Where can people find the book? What's and both of them now? You've got 1 million followers, but then you've got Hook Point. Talk about those 2 books and where people can find them, and if they want to bring you on as a consultant, how can they be in touch?
So I would always recommend for people to start with the Hook Point book, and the book is called Hook Point: How to Stand Out in a 3-Second World, and they can get it at hookpoint.com. Because it really sets you up for success with followers. And then after Hook Point, we talk a lot about social media and Hook Point, and then after that, they can go and check out 1 million followers that they can get at book.1millionfollowers.com. But I highly recommend checking out the book first on Hook Point, because that sets you up for success and teaches you how to master the art of gaining attention. And it's not just from just organic social, it's revenue generation, it's online and offline. So it's a well-rounded kind of perspective on that. So, and if they want to get in touch with me, they can message me on Instagram at Brendan Kane, or they can email me at bkane@brendanjkane.com.
Awesome. And the question is, can I really get 1 million followers in 30 days? Is it possible?
Yeah, we've done it 10, 15 times. But the question is, do you need 1 million followers? Because again, it's like followers, the tactics we have for followers will get you the followers. But if you don't have the foundation of how to capture attention and understand how to create content for what the algorithms are looking for, you're not going to maximize reach. You're not going to maximize the benefit of those followers. So that's why we start in that place. Is all of our systems work. They're simple systems, they're simple strategies, but they're not necessarily easy. It takes time, it takes work, it takes dedication to maximize the value of it.
Yeah, I was saying that in jest because I think you've proven that's possible. Let me ask you, I meant to end it there, but something that I just thought of occurred to me is, what's the value? Is there a value in paid followers? Or you hear people say, well, I'm going to get paid Twitter followers or paid LinkedIn followers. Is that something to run away from?
Yeah. So there's two different forms when people say that. There are platforms that you are actually paying for the followers, which I would question the validity of those followers and how are they coming? Are they real? Now, most of the services at this point are not doing anything fake, so I don't want to kind of 5 or 10 years ago is different, but I don't want to say that there's a lot of people out there selling fake followers, because I don't really believe that. The other avenue is that you can pay to advertise your account to get people to opt in, where you're paying for reach, you're paying for exposure, and then it's up to the consumer to opt into it. In either direction, the first question I have is, what is it doing for the business? How are you going to maximize those followers to drive the growth that you're looking for? And then that will determine whether it makes sense to move forward. I don't really believe that you should go off and buy fake followers or followers that aren't really going to move the business forward, but advertising your account to then drive correlative follower growth. If you know how to leverage those followers for larger opportunities, then it may be a good strategy. So for example, with me, I gained 1 million followers in 30 days, less because I wanted to turn those 1 million followers into consumers of my services or products. I'm not saying that none of them have, they're all real people and I got them engaged. But I focus more on taking those 1 million followers and leveraging it to secure a literary agent, to get a publishing deal, to speak on stage in front of thousands of people, to get on television, on podcasts, and build larger opportunities. So I looked at it from a more strategic, larger picture than just, hey, I have a follower and I want to convert that follower into a sale.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, hold on, I want to talk about a new book that's coming up. So when we sign off, I want to chat just a second. But hey, guys, thank you for being on Power Lunch Live today. Reach out to Brendan if you want some help. Because look, this is where the world is going. If you're running a business today, you really need to have this strategy locked down, because I think it's just that important. But thank you for joining Power Lunch Live. You can go to the website powerlunch.live to check out our upcoming schedule for October. And anyway, have a great weekend. We'll be back with you on Tuesday. And until then, stay safe and have a great weekend.